Hello, it's me, Tom, your friendly neighborhood atheist, and I have a confession to make. I was not indoctrinated. Now, in some other videos, I've told my story, my religious story, but I've never really admitted that I was not indoctrinated. I was brought up in a Christian household. I had to go to church, and I went to many churches. Every time we went to go visit other family, we went to their church. And my parents didn't go to church, at least not on a regular basis. Not like they made me go to church. And I went to Sunday school, and eventually I got kicked out of Sunday school because I was too argumentative, I guess. I was not accepting what they were telling me. And the thing I remember most is the story of Noah's Ark, where they're trying to tell me that was true, and I don't know, it's not true. I don't believe that. And they said, no, you don't have to come back. And then the priest, he tried to take me under his wing to keep me involved in the church, and he knew I was an atheist before I even knew what an atheist was. But my family never tried to pound into my head that God was real. Unbeknownst to me, they accepted that God was real. So they just assumed I accepted that God was real. And it wasn't until I was in my late teens before I realized that they believed that God was real. But they never really forced me to believe. And I was exposed, my father's side of the family was Jewish. And they would make, comments about the Jewish side of the family. And they would make comments about the other Christians in the family, because there was Lutherans and Presbyterians and Baptists, and I don't think that there was any Mormons. I'd like to research that, see if there's any Mormons in my extended family. That'd be interesting to me. But there was a lot of different versions of Christianity involved. But they never forced me to believe anything specific. In fact, growing up, I can't even really say what religion it was that I was brought up in, because I know my mother was one religion and my stepmother was another religion, and my father, he didn't really care. My father was born to a Jewish family in Antwerp, Belgium, that during right before World War II. Guess where that landed him? Yes, he and his family were, I don't want to say captured, but they were taken hold of and put into a camp. Yes, my father was put into a concentration camp. Very fortunately for him, it was very early part of the war and before things got ugly. And fortunately, his family was relatively well off, and they somehow managed to have the forethought, because they saw the politics that were going on. They knew trouble was coming. So they prepared. They hid jewels. In the story I'm told, they hid jewels in my father's teddy bear. And they were able to bribe their way out and come to America. And they changed their name from Levi to Leeds. So I'm the first male-born Leeds in my family. And I'm going to be the last, sadly. But that's fine. It's just a name. But I had that part of religion in my family, though I didn't know about this part, at least not in details, until much later. I was already an atheist before I learned this bit. But I was exposed to a lot of different religions. I was exposed to neighbors who were Muslim. I was exposed to people who were Indian, so they were Hindu. And I knew some Buddhists. And I had family that were all versions of Christian, and some that were Jewish. And so I was exposed to a lot of different religions. And that's what I basically attribute my atheism to. I was able to see religion from very different vantage points, and not from a distance, but from close up. I was involved. I went to synagogue as a kid, not so much for myself, though I was a little jealous of my cousins who got to get bar mitzvahed. But I went to synagogues, and I went to all these different churches, and I don't remember if I ever went to a mosque, but our neighbors were Muslim, and I was very closely exposed to these things, and I understood they all had a different viewpoint of God, and that's kind of what kind of informed me that it's all made up. They all, they're just making this stuff up. There's nothing. If there was really a God, they would all serve the same God. They would all believe in the same God. If there was a real God, they'd all have the same story. But everybody, every single church, every single person, everyone had a different story about God. And that's how I knew God was just made up, because nobody could agree. So I'm an atheist, not because I hate God, not because I hate religion, not because I hate anything. I am an atheist because I was informed. And I'm an atheist because I wasn't indoctrinated. I'm very fortunate in that my ex-wife is trying to indoctrinate my daughter. And I'm just saying, hey, listen to what your mother tells you. But listen to what these other people tell you. Listen to what the Muslims tell you. Listen to what the Jews tell you. Listen to what everybody tells you. And inform yourself of what everybody thinks about God. And then you can decide which religion you want to be. And chances are she's not going to choose any of them, because I'm hoping she'll be like me and be like, yeah, I think they're all making it up. But I was never indoctrinated. Tom, your friendly neighborhood atheist, was never a believer in God. I just never bought it. I just never had a need for a God. I never had a reason to believe there was a God. I was never angry. I was never frustrated. I never was pissed off at religion. I'm pissed off at the influence religion has on politics. I'm really pissed off at the influence religion has on education. I think they're screwing everything up. I think religion is just effing everything up. That makes me angry. But God is made up. God is imaginary. God is mythological. God... I can't explain more to people. They don't seem to understand. An atheist only lacks the belief in a God. Mostly I just say we don't accept the claim that there is a God. Atheist, hell, heaven, it's all meaningless. They're just words. They're just words that theists use to express their faith. And faith, by its very nature, is believing something that there is no proof of. That's why they call it faith. You have no reason to believe it, but you believe it anyway. That's why, sports fanatics, I have faith that my team is going to win, even though they've never won anything ever. But I have faith that this year they're going to win. That's what faith is. Faith is believing something without evidence. And people who say, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, are just stupid. Because no amount of faith would make you an atheist. That's what an atheist is. Someone without faith. Though some atheists have faith, but they just don't have religious faith. An atheist only, one thing, doesn't think there's a God. That's all that has nothing to do with evolution, no science, no nothing. That's the one little thing. And sure, many atheists fall into certain categories of being liberal or democratic or scientific. They tend to fall into these categories, but those categories are not what make them an atheist. Only the one thing. And people who think that there's a God are not atheists. And people who are not sure that there's a God are agnostic. And people who just, God, I don't think so, are atheists. Simple as that. Anyways, I'm Tom, your friendly neighborhood atheist, and I'll catch you next time.